You're listening to episode 323, The Weeds and Seeds of Ministry, and this is episode number 6 in this series.
Welcome to Transforming Missions podcast, providing you with insights and resources you need to lead a movement of Jesus followers.
So we'll explore this week's weed and seed soon, but again, we want to remind you what they are and why they're important and why we're talking about them on the podcast.
So to get started, weeds represent obstacles such as overwhelm, fear, isolation that hinder us as pastors and leaders. Weeds can quickly spread, choking out our leadership effectiveness. So in recognizing these weeds early helps us remove them and make space for the seeds.
So seeds are the positive responses to the weeds. They're promoting growth and effective leadership. Practices like empowering others and building trust can strengthen our leadership, allowing us to serve God and our communities effectively.
This week's weed has it all figured out and would tell you everything that they know about weeds and seeds.
Yes, they would. You are absolutely right. So before I tell you what we named this week's weed, I want you to imagine a conversation with a person who has an answer for everything. When you're with them, you can feel either irritated or annoyed, or maybe even like they're trying to show you how smart they are. They always have to have the better, the right, or the perfect answer, and there's not any room for growth or conversation, and often there's not any place for learning either. They accumulate knowledge, and they do that simply to defend their point. Does any of that sound familiar?
Oh, Sarah, it's a little too familiar. I've been trying not to picture the people coming to mind as you talk, but here I am with a clear picture of more than one person in my mind.
They're not people you want to be with or spend time around, are they?
I'm not going to answer that.
I didn't ask you for their names. We have identity for protection on this podcast.
No, in reality, you don't want to spend a lot of time with them. They're what we call know-it-alls.
And that is part of the name of this weed. Weed number 6 is Know It All Narcissus. Know It All Narcissus has a disguise. It's their name, Narcissus. You might know it commonly as a daffodil. Initially, this weed looks smart and helpful. But after a short while, you realize that they're just that common daffodil and they're not really smart at all. I feel like I need to apologize to daffodils. I really do like them when they're in my garden. But Know It All Narcissus thinks that they have all of the answer, believes their way is the only right way, and has a mindset that is fixed.
So let's talk about the fixed mindset for a minute.
Sure. What are you thinking about?
Well, I'm wondering if it's the fixed mindset that, if you will allow me to do this, because this isn't going to sound very grace-filled or generous, which is what we talk about a lot on this podcast. But I'm wondering if a fixed mindset would make a person rather annoying.
Oh, I think you were very grace-filled in saying that. And I'd say, yes, the experiences that I'm thinking of where know-it-all Narcissus shows up, it's very difficult to have a conversation because their mind is already made up on the best, right, and or correct way to do something. Now, I will say this. There are people that I've encountered with a fixed mindset that aren't annoying. Now, that doesn't sound very grace-filled or generous, but I don't find them annoying. It's more of a developmental stage that they're at. They haven't yet had the experiences in life to help them see the contextual nuances and capacity for people to grow and change. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. And the thing that comes to mind is that the person that has this know-it-all mindset usually aren't very good listeners.
Right.
And I've been in meetings where people talk about being people-oriented and loving people and starting where people are, but they don't do a whole lot of listening to find out. So yes. And I like the idea that you say it's developmental, because it does give us a little more generous attitude toward some,
Yeah,
because that I like that. So thanks.
the basics of a fixed mindset are that you don't believe that people can grow or change. And and so if you don't believe that people can grow or change, you do have your mind made up. But I've also seen it enough to know, like a child, like they don't have enough life experiences. The world is pretty black and white. Like I'm either going to get my dessert or I'm not. It's not like you say I get my dessert if I eat my dinner. No, like I just want my dessert. They're not wanting to have the condition put on that. It's a very either or type of thinking. Most children do grow up and grow out of that type of mindset. But when it's truly a fixed mindset,
I think part of the know it all mindset also comes because people don't know it all and they don't want people to know. And so they've got to show that they do have something to say. And so they're not vulnerable and they're not authentic, which are two very powerful pieces of being a good leader.
they think that they need to be the smartest person in the room instead of pausing to ask the question, what can I learn from the other people that are here? And how can we together move to an even better place because of who we are together?
So you say something like that, and then I'll respond to it. So I'm the smartest person in the room.
And I think there's arrogance there that can be off-putting as well. But I think that there's a seed that can be helpful here. And why don't we move to that in our conversation?
Okay, let me introduce to you lifelong learner Lily. She's our sixth seed. Lifelong learner Lily recognizes they always have something to learn from others. That's a big deal. They ask thoughtful, reflective questions. And no matter how many seasons they've served, they continue learning and growing. Lifelong learner Lily recognizes different contexts for ministry, and that they each require different approaches. They celebrate the skills and experiences of the people in the church and the community and help others use what is learned to inform ministry. And I'm going to tell you, those who are leaders, who are those lifelong learners, celebrate the skills and experiences of the people around them who are the staff in which they work. That's important too. They also recognize there's a history to the church before they ever arrived, and that the church wasn't necessarily waiting on them to arrive to make their history good. I think that's what I would add to that lifelong learner Lily list. How's that?
You just added another L. Yeah, and hearing you describe that seed, it's almost like a breath of fresh air. Like what you described in a person, I would want to be around that person. And I'm also hearing you describe a level of self-awareness within lifelong learner Lily.
Yeah, I didn't say that specifically, but I think you're onto something there. Self-awareness is a big deal in terms of who we are as followers of Jesus, but being leaders. And I appreciate you bringing that up. Sarah, I do a lot of talking, and I probably should do more listening since we're talking about this today. I've found myself in several situations recently where I've been a part of seminars or training events that I've actually led, that I've actually
you're finding yourself there as a participant, and you've actually before led these trainings. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
And there are two things that go through my mind immediately. One of them I dismiss very quickly, and that is, I've done this. Why do I have to do it now? But I dismiss that because there's another part of me, and maybe it's part of my makeup, but I hope it's part of my maturity as a leader, and that is, I'm going to learn something here, and I'm going to step into it to find out what I might learn. So I don't walk into the room to say, I've done this. If you all need any help, you just ask me. I walk into the room to say, what am I going to learn that might improve what I already know, or might help me take a step in a direction that I need to take? And so I want to listen. And I want to tell you that God, I'm going to say it this way. God doesn't put me in situations to sit around and say, well, God, just wait till I get back and I'll tell you how it happened. God puts me in situations that, like one recently, I've got to make a confession. Retirement's coming up quickly. And one of the things that I've been worried about in retirement, and I'm making a confession, and that is about relationships. I am my best when I'm with people that I really appreciate and respect, people that I care for. And when I'm with people like that, life is good. I mean, it's just wonderful. And now I'm going to retire. Who are the people that I'm sitting with? Who are the people I'm being with? Well, they're not going to let me come to their meetings or be a part of their lives because I'm no longer a district superintendent. They're going to say, your time's up. You go find another sandbox to play in. That's how I feel about it. So in this experience I had recently, I'm there, I'm learning, but I'm there with somebody I don't know. And if for no other reason, the several hours being a part of the training, I got to develop a new relationship. It was a gift, God's gift to me, maybe for that day, maybe for a season. But it did feel a little better about saying, what in the world am I going to do? This is where life is. This is what I've enjoyed doing. These are the people I want to be around. And then God says, why don't you just sit back and let me send some new people into your life and see how this might make things better. That's part of an understanding of a lifelong learner, Lily, in my estimation.
Lifelong, I think for those of us, well, I'll just speak for myself. And I know that this is one of your strengths as well, Tim, that we have learner in our top 5. And the process, just the process of learning is a gift to us. And when we're able to approach even things as you were naming that we have experienced before from a perspective of there's still something here that I can learn, or how can we improve this, or what might I take away from this? There's an opportunity to be present. And, guess what? As you named, you might build some relationships with some new people as well. And that is always a good thing. Now, I will say this, and I'm going to say this tongue in cheek. Life would be a lot easier if we didn't have to keep learning. But, but
what true statement that is.
But I say that, and I honestly think I would get bored, because without something new to learn, without new challenges that are coming before us, without new opportunities to grow, I think it could get pretty boring. And maybe I'm saying what you were saying about relationships, and I'm just naming it in a different way, because how do we often learn? It's through the people around us. It's through the conversations that we have with other people. It's the relationships that we develop that we learn new things. It doesn't have to be formal learning, a classroom setting. People can teach us a lot if we simply pay attention and engage.
And that's what I was thinking, Sarah. You just named it. That sometimes when we think a lifelong learner, we've always got our nose in a book, or we're reading something, or we're studying something. because we want to formalize the learning or the education. A lifelong learner is someone who says, man, I never knew that, and I'm glad I got to have that experience.
Right.
That's more of what we're talking about. And one of the ways that that's shown up in my life, and I've talked about this before, is that God sends people to me who will help me become more who I'm supposed to be. And if I'm not open to the learning, if I'm not open to the person or to what I might learn, then I'm actually not being faithful to God. And that sounds, some people might say that that's doesn't make sense, but the same way we learn through other people is the same way we experience God's love.
Yeah.
And if we're not open to that, then we'll miss it. That's the reason we ask, where have you seen Jesus this week?
Right.
Where's Jesus shown up? It's because it shows up in the people around us and what we're learning, the experiences that we have, really enriches life. I just don't know what people do who cut themselves off from others because they disagree or they can't get along or they, theologically, politically, whatever it is. We're just stunning ourselves with the love of God and learning. And so if it's lifelong, it goes on as long as it is. I mean, I just turned 70. I haven't graduated from learning.
I don't know that you ever will. and that's a good thing. You said that well. Is there any additional wisdom? You've shared a lot, but is there any additional wisdom that you want to offer about lifelong learner Lily?
I think, Sarah, the only thing that I would offer, and it's really reiterating what we've said, is that God sends people to us in different seasons of our lives for us to experience God's goodness and God's love in the way we need it at the time we need it the most. I think theologically we would call that incarnation. And if we're not open to learning, we might even miss that God showed up as a baby. And if we're not open to learning, we would certainly miss the people that God sends our way, sometimes to help us on our way, and lots of times just to help us be who we were created to be, thinking that we might have been that already.
Well, what I'm hearing you name there is, when we talk about learning, we're talking about transformation.
Exactly.
And that transformation, formal learning events, hello, I have 4 degrees. I mean,
you could be a thermometer.
There's a place for that. That's what I think I want to say. In and through those formal learning environments, where I have learned the most is from the people. It's not the textbook that I've read. It's the people, it's the conversation, it's the stories of, yes, how is Jesus showing up in your life that illustrate and animate what you're learning, that then leads to the transformation and the growth of becoming more of who God created me to be. And that's lifelong learner Lily. Change your name. but embody the practices. That's our encouragement for today.
I'll say this as we come to the end of this episode. I am grateful for what I've learned from you and the partnership we've had through this podcast with Transforming Mission. And it sounds like I'm saying it's not going to continue to happen, but that's not what I'm saying. I have the opportunity to thank you for helping me along my path of being a lifelong learner. So thank you.
As we have said privately many times to one another, I'll say it as publicly as a podcast is. We make a good team, Tim Bias, and we have a lot of fun doing it. So thank you as well. And thank you for joining us for the 6th installment of Weeds and Seeds of Ministry. And no, this podcast isn't going anywhere when Tim retires. We are continuing, thanks to the wonderful world of technology. We hope that you will continue to stay open to learning from the people and experiences, and most of all, from what Jesus is teaching you. As a reminder, you can find show notes for this episode at transformingmission.org/323. And if you're looking for those previous episodes in this series, there are 5 of them. We'll link to it on the show notes page as well. And remember, who you are is how you lead. Bye for now.